When Borje Salming first came to the NHL, I was a young boy of 8 or 9, and I always was fascinated by the toughness of him and how he drew a lot of interest from a lot of people over the years, both from his native Sweden and Canada as well as the United States. Of course, it all came to a head at the Canada Cup, where Sweden was playing Canada at the Maple Leaf Gardens. He had an outstanding standing ovation, and it's kind of ironic. His life came full circle. He was recently diagnosed with ALS, and unfortunately, the disease really worked hard on him in recent weeks. Now, he and his family decided to make probably what was going to be considered his last visit to Maple Leaf Gardens. He appeared for a couple of games and saluted the fans with his friends like Lanny McDonald, Daryl Sittler, Matt Sundin, Tiger Williams. But when the news came across the pike today, Thanksgiving Day, United States, November 24th, it was a shock, but not a shock. Iconic Maple Leafs defenseman Borje Salming has passed away at age 71 from ALS. Now, according to Adam Carter from CBC News, the Maple Leafs announced his death Thursday afternoon. Now, in the CBC report, President and alternate Governor Brendan Shanahan of the Leafs said in a statement, Borje was a pioneer of the game and an icon with an unbreakable spirit and unquestioned toughness. He helped open the door for Europeans in NHL and defined himself through his play on the ice and through his contributions to the community. Now, only 71, just like Guy Lafleur, that's not a life, ladies and gentlemen. Borje joined the Maple Leafs 50 years ago and will forever be part of our hockey family. We extend our deepest condolences to his wife, Pia, his children Teresa, Anders, Erasmus, Bianca, Lisa, and Sarah, and of course his brother Stig. Stig was also a top-flight player in Sweden for a number of years. Now, Salming was diagnosed with a progressive disease earlier this year. He had been receiving treatment in his native Sweden. A pioneer and European star from the northern Swedish town of Kurnu, Salming played 1,099 games, mostly with the Leafs, and ranks fourth among the team's career scoring leaders with 768 points. He ended his career with Detroit. In '97, he was voted one of the 100 greatest players in NHL history by a panel that included former players, coaches, executives, and media members. Now, Lanny McDonald gave him a high tribute today on CBC. He said he's a top 5 defenseman of all time. No disrespect to Lanny. He is a top 20 defenseman of all time. But the fact was his defensive play was not just what he should be judged on. The fact his toughness, the way he supported the Swedish national program, supported the Leafs, support all levels of hockey in Ontario and throughout Canada, and not even being from Canada. He was what he called also Canadian in all our eyes. Not only Swedish, but an honorary Canadian. Now, Salming's number 21 hangs in a rafter at the Scotiabank Arena in Toronto after he was retired in 2016. It's there alongside other Leafs greats such as Dave Keon, Johnny Bower, and Dougie Gilmour. He was also the fourth former Maple Leaf to be immortalized with a statue in the team's Legend Row in Maple Leaf Square, alongside icons like Bower, Daryl Sittler, and Teddy Kennedy. His importance to the Maple Leafs in the city of Toronto was clear during the emotional tributes in recent days and standing ovations as he attended 3 games of Toronto for the last time. Now, Salming, with his family and friends and former teammates by his side, received tribute roars of applause from the appreciative crowds at 2 separate games. In an especially poignant moment before a game between the Leafs and the visiting Penguins, fellow former Leaf Daryl Sittler tearfully raised Salming's arm to ensure he could wave to the crowd of thousands. Now, he had lost his voice by this time and the majority of his movement in his upper body. Sittler told the CBC News that night that he knew those games might be the last time he ever got to see his teammate and friend. It was a magical moment. People who watched that and the people who participated in it, they'll remember that for the rest of their lives. Now, robbed of his speech and again his upper body mobility, Salming shook hands with every member of the Maple Leafs as he slowly departed the ice at his final appearance before his second game against the Canucks. Former teammate and NHL great Lanny McDonald told CBC that it was a gift for Salming's family to be able to see just how much he was looked up to when he was celebrated in Toronto this month. It was such an honor for him to be able to have his family understand how much everyone loved and respected him. More than anything, he was such a great teammate, both on and off the ice. Now, McDonald had played with Salming for about 7 seasons, before his unceremonious trade by Harold Ballard to Colorado. Now, Salming, we all know him for his strong two-way play, made him one of hockey's elite defensemen. Now, when he was playing, he definitely was a top four. He was also one of the most popular players in team history. Now, wearing the Toronto Maple sweater for his 16 seasons was a great honor. Salming said it as part of a statement made upon the announcement of his statue in 2014. I always look back on my time in Toronto with fondness and enjoy the chance to visit every chance I get. Former Leafs captain countryman Mats Sundin previously said that every Swede respects Salming and holds him in high esteem for his wealth of accomplishments. For us, Swedish hockey players, he's the man who showed us the right way. He is a trailblazer. Now, at the time when he came in, we had Inga Hammarström, and Salming came in with Toronto, Tommy Bergman. You had some borderline players, but until Salming and Hammarström came in, and then Vaclav Nemansky led to the Stashies coming in, all the Russian players, he really broke open the door. Now, starting in 73, Salming helped open the doors of North American hockey for his countrymen, what hockey fans looked down upon, with a childish nickname, Chicken Swedes, tanks of stereotypes that they couldn't keep up with the physicality of the North American game. A lot of it based on what happened in the exhibition series against Sweden between the 8-game series against Russia, where the 2 games in Sweden where Salming played in became bizarre. Now, Salming helped annihilate that stereotype by not just surviving but thriving in the NHL, earning the nickname King. In 16 seasons with the team for a final campaign with the Red Wings, he had 620 assists, including 148 goals. Now, Sittler said when Borje came to the NHL, he was a target. The game was different back then. In the shower after games, it was obvious how much abuse Salming took. He said, from the number of welts and scars all over his body. The next night he'd just go back out and do it again, Sittler said. He had a love and a passion for the game like no other. Now, Salming was named the league's first All-Star team once and 5 times the second All-Star team, which was similarly a team record. He came just shy of enough votes for the Norris Trophy as the league's best defenseman in 1980. In a statement Thursday, NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman called Salming the first Swedish star to play in the league, and as physically and mentally tough as he was skillfully gifted. He blazed a trail that many of the greatest players in NHL history followed, while shattering all the stereotypes about European players that had been prevalent in the league, populated almost entirely by North Americans before his arrival in 73. Now, Salming on Saturday nights was a very interesting thing. He was sort of like the quarterback. The only player I can compare him with, and this is all due respect, even Johnny Unitas, as he got older, had that winning attitude. Even playing with the Colts in the 1970s, where he won one Super Bowl and barely lost another one to the Jets. But Salming, what stands out for a lot of us, he took a cut in the game that almost killed him, similar to what happened to Clint Malarchuk. And they asked him, any trepidation going back in the ice. He said, I'm a hockey player. The best compliment I can give Borje Salming, he was a hockey player. But that era of the Maple Leafs with Palmateer and Sittler and McDonald and Errol Thompson and Randy Carlisle, Ian Turnbull, all the great players. My good friend Alan Glebinski always said it takes a certain type of person to play in the NHL, but for him to play almost 2 decades in the NHL and still giving back to Sweden at Canada Cup, at the World Championships, at the Olympics, and the iconic players of the NHL, he's definitely top 50. But when McDonald said he's a top 5 defenseman, no, because you can't compare that as well, because he was never a power play specialist. He was never a defensive specialist. He was a quarterback, and just like Kenny Stabler is another example. Kenny Stabler wasn't the greatest player, but he was a leader. Everything he did was leadership. For a decade, Stabler really was the Oakland Raiders, like the just win baby aesthetic. Borje Salming, you'll never see a Swedish player like him again, because all the Swedish players now have been Americanized or Canadianized, if that's a word. But my God, he went quick, ladies and gentlemen. I thought with ALS, with Dwight Clark and Tony Proudfoot, they last for a little while, but unfortunately he went quick. So it must have been a late diagnosis. But those scenes in Toronto where he was waving to the crowd, my God, ladies and gentlemen, what an important and historic moment in Maple Leaf history. And for all the Maple Leaf fans, I'm a longtime Montreal Canadiens fan, and I can say I had big respect for Borje. Some of the best games Toronto ever played with Salming lineup was against Montreal, especially the 78 and 79 playoffs, where they were trying to overcome so much. And Tiger Williams said, Borje Salmings were two players on the ice, and he said against Montreal we needed two more Borje Salmings, and that sums it up. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing here with our Vintage Hockey Podcast, let us know with a like, comment, or subscribe. But don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, heroes never died; they just reached the next level. And the best compliment I can say, I would have loved to see him play for the Montreal Canadiens. You put him on the big three, he would have scored probably 30, 40 goals. But what a gentleman, what a player. God bless Sweden, God bless the Maple Leafs, and God bless the great moments he gave us. Thanks for listening. Bye.